What is going on, guys? ScorpionSlayer66 here, coming at you for another episode of Ranked, and today we will be looking at one of the greatest classic rock discographies of all time, and that is by the amazing band known as The Doors. Just a little disclaimer before we get into it, I will be only ranking the ones where Jim Morrison was involved, so the last three that they made after Jim had passed away, I am not going to include, and my list is a little bit different in a couple areas than some people, so don't get offended. This is just how I believe that the Doors albums are ranked for me personally. So let's quit the babbling and get into how I rank the Doors albums. Coming in at the last spot is The Doors' The Soft Parade. Now, again, I don't think this album is bad by any means, but compared to the rest of The Doors' discography, it's definitely one that falls the flattest for me personally. The Doors were known for an extremely hard-edged, psychedelic rock type of feel, and this album took it in a completely different direction. I mean, from the title, it's called The Soft Parade, and the music was very soothing and soft in tone, and it kind of just didn't mix extremely well with Jim's voice. The instrumentation was a little bit off, in my opinion. Still has a lot of great songs on it, but it's definitely the one that I return to the least from their discography. Again, it's definitely worth checking out, but only after you listen to the rest of their stuff. Taking the number 5 slot is Waiting for the Sun. Now, again, not a bad album by any means. This is really where, from 5 on, all of the albums are stellar in my opinion. But yeah, this one just falls flat again versus everything else that they would release later on, or they had released previously. But again, so many great songs on here, from Spanish Caravan to especially Hello, I Love You. It really showed Jim's vocal dynamics, and again, it's just, compared to the rest of their stuff, it doesn't have as hard of an edge, so it doesn't stick out as much to me personally compared to the rest of their work. But again, definitely worth checking out, especially if you love The Doors as a whole. Coming in at the number 4 spot, this is the one where a lot of people would disagree on my placement with it, but this is The Doors' Strange Days. Now, this was their second album, and this was the chance to prove that their debut just wasn't a fluke, and they did it with flying colors. I mean, again, some of their most known songs are on here. Obviously, the title track, When the Music's Over, and especially People Are Strange, all became some of the biggest hits of their career. And again, it's a very amazing album, and it's definitely worthy of checking out. But compared to especially their previous album and some of the other stuff that would come into the future, it just doesn't stick out to me as much. Now, a lot of people would put this in their top favorite albums, and I definitely can see why. It's just, for me as a whole project, it's not as good as stuff that would come later. But again, Jim showed off his amazing vocal talent, so everybody showed off how great they were at their own parts of the instrumentation, and it's just another fantastic album in their discography, just one that barely misses the top half of the list. Coming in at number 3 is Morrison Hotel. Now, why I love this album so much is because it came directly after the Soft Parade, and many people thought the Doors were going to be done after that. I mean, nobody, for the most part, in the general music critic scene, and even their fan base, weren't too stellar on the Soft Parade, so many people thought that the Doors were losing their edge. But the following year, they came back with Morrison Hotel, and it showed that the Doors weren't going anywhere. This album was so hard-edged, extremely bluesy, introspective, and it really reflects in some of my personal favorite songs of their entire career, especially like Indian Summer. It was a very experimental song for their career, and just really fantastic stuff, and I just barely put it above Strange Days just because it was kind of their comeback album, for lack of a better term, or the one where they showed that they were not going anywhere, they still were a force to be reckoned with, and just an amazing album, and definitely one of the best of their career. So coming in at the number 2 spot is The Doors' LA Woman. Now, what I love about this album was it was so much different from any of their other work, and when you know the circumstances of Jim Morrison passing away with this album, it really gives it this almost different viewpoint on the album itself. It really makes you start looking at like his vocal performance, what he was saying on the album. It was extremely unhinged, and you can tell this was a man near his breaking point, whether it was his addictions or his mental stability slipping through the cracks. And with so many stellar songs, from the title track to The Changeling, L'America, and especially Riders on the Storm, it was just this lightning in a bottle moment for the Doors, where it was their last album, but they went out on possibly the highest note on their career. Most people either put this or their self-titled at number 1, and it's not hard to see why. So my second favorite Doors album is LA Woman. So taking the number 1 spot is the Doors' self-titled debut from 1967. Most people would agree with me on this choice, but it's really hard to argue against that. I mean, cover to cover, all of the songs on here are some of the most famous songs of all time, some of the best songs, and it has my 2 personal favorite Doors songs, which are Break On Through to the Other Side, and especially the end. The end is just such a weird moment in music history, especially for that time, where it was this like a Oedipal kind of spoken word poetry song, but it was 11 minutes long and it doesn't feel anywhere near that. And another cool thing is when Apocalypse Now used the end as the beginning, it kind of shaped how I viewed the song, and I think that was probably the best musical choice in cinema of all time. It's just so perfectly in tune with the movie, the themes of it, foreshadowing. It's just every time I listen to the song after watching Apocalypse Now, I get a completely different viewpoint of it, and just yeah, there's not much that can really be said about this album. I mean, pretty much every top 100 albums list you'll look at, this album is somewhere near the top, or at least the top 50. Just so many great songs. Again, like I said, Break On Through and The End, but there's also Soul Kitchen, Whiskey Bar, Backdoor Man, just so many classic songs, so many of the best songs of all time, and one of my all-time favorite albums, and that is The Doors' self-titled. So that is how I rank the Doors discography. Let me know, guys, how would you rank their albums? What would you change about my list? Let me know. And while you're down in the comments, hit that like button, subscribe, and until next time, guys, take care.